Never Mind the Buzzwords is a community event from Jigsaw Better Business. Taking place bi-monthly, its aim is to build a community of businesses and professionals where you can learn, share and connect. It's about going beyond the jargon and coming away from each session with knowledge, tangible tools, tips, strategies, and hopefully an extended network. Each event is focused either on people or a process. In the process sessions, we talk about how we deliver value in our business. Topics here include lean tools and thinking, operational excellence, sustainability, and digital transformation. In the people sessions, we look beyond the process to the who, discussing topics like leadership, teams, culture, and professional development. Never Mind the Buzzwords isn't just an event that you attend, it's an event to participate in. So get involved in the conversation, put your camera on if you can, share your thoughts, ideas or questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. And don't forget to stay in touch. We have a LinkedIn group where we upload resources and recordings from this community. And if you follow Never Mind the Buzzwords on Eventbrite, you'll be notified whenever we post a new event. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Julie. I am Jigsaw Better Business's Head of People Development and Organisational Psychologist. You're all very welcome to our Never Mind the Buzzwords session. As the video mentioned, it is definitely a place to get involved in the conversation, get some food for thought, make connections. So do feel free as we go along to pop any thoughts or ideas or questions into the chat, and we will definitely be coming to those later. So today, I think it might be kind of a timely session for any fans of the award-winning TV show Succession. I believe that they just started a 4th season this week. And while that is obviously a drama series, I suppose real life Succession can be quite dramatic as well, especially when it involves a family business. It could involve some tricky situations there. So today at Never Mind the Buzzwords, we will hopefully prepare you for any of those potentially difficult situations, helping you to handle them better. So succession planning, it is all about the process of identifying and developing potential future leaders, right? So being able to kind of fill key roles so that when people choose to or need to leave an organization, that post is effectively filled. So that is what we're talking about today, and I'm really delighted to be joined by Stephen Shortt. I'm really looking forward to speaking with Stephen, who has first-hand experience in this world, so I'm very curious to hear all about that. Before we do start speaking with Stephen, maybe just to get a sense of who is in the room, I will launch a poll. And this is just to get a sense of what kind of businesses you all are in. So are you a current generation entrepreneur, a next generation entrepreneur, an entrepreneur, and you're not sure if it's a family business yet or other? So say maybe if you work within an organization and you're not an entrepreneur, you might select other there. So we'll give people a couple of minutes to select their answers there. And so Stephen, I suppose while those responses are coming in, maybe I'll give a quick introduction to you. You are an entrepreneur, a succession planner, a speaker, a mentor, a coach, a consultant, and a Disney princess. Would you maybe care to explain that last one?
So yeah, hi Julie, how are you? Thanks very much for the introduction. Actually, just when your video was starting at the very beginning of it, I for a moment I was like, why is she doing this? I thought you were voicing over because we had just been talking before on the video. I was like, why is she voicing over? Why didn't she record? Oh, she is recording it. Sorry. So yeah, my name is Stephen Shortt. I'm involved in a number of different projects around in Ireland and around the world. One of the projects that I was involved in for a number of years, and I'm still involved in, is the Global Student Entrepreneur Awards, where we help university level students who own and operate their own business. We're in 50 countries around the world. We have national competitions. We have our regional competition for Europe in Istanbul next week. I'm heading over to be a judge, and then the global finals in Cape Town in a couple of weeks' time. But in 2019, there was a documentary crew that wanted to do a documentary about entrepreneurship and student entrepreneurship in particular. So they used the GSEA Global Finals in Macau at the time as their backdrop. So I was the chair of the global chair of the competition, and I was the MC for the event. So I'm in the background, and that documentary now is on National Geographic and Disney Plus. So I am officially a Disney princess because I'm on Disney Plus.
Amazing. I love it.
So
it's a great title that you can claim. Love
so
that.
Just the other thing, when you were introducing succession and family businesses, I don't know if anybody caught the story yesterday. I saw it first in Love in Dublin, but I think it's in the Daily Star as well. There's a chipper called Lambs in Ballyfermot that's been family run for 32 years. And there was a massive breakdown. The son who'd been working there since he was 8 wanted more money, wanted to start taking over more responsibility. There was a big hoo-ha. So he left the business a year ago, or he was either fired or let go, or he left or whatever because they couldn't work together. So next week he's opening a chipper, another Chinese right next door to Lambs called New Lambs. So
wow.
I mean, there's all kinds of things can happen in family businesses, and all kinds of things can break down. So
wow, yeah, exactly.
So there's some great stories out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it can be potentially very dramatic. And just actually to share the results of the poll and just see, as you said, who's in the room. 42%, so a majority there actually said other. So maybe you're employed in a company. 25% say current generation, and then 17% each for next gen entrepreneur, and 17 for entrepreneur, not sure if it's family business yet. So that's just who we have in the room with us. But no, I love that story, Stephen. It's a very interesting one of the kind of, I suppose, passing on family businesses. And I've heard a figure that, 80% of second generation businesses fail. Where does that come from, or why is that?
So this is Kellogg's Institute in the US. They did this. Now it's a couple of years old, but it still holds weight. Like any time that this is kind of dug into, it does ring true. So it's 80% of businesses fail in the second generation, and I think it's only 10% make it to the third generation. Now, from my study, from talking to a lot of people, my view is that that's actually not necessarily the fault of the second generation. A lot of the time, that's the fault of the current generation not being able to adapt. So when we get to a certain point in our business, when we're the current generation, we had, I think, a quarter of the room here, a current generation. We've put blood, sweat, and tears into this. We wanted to continue. When we get towards the end of our career, we've more to risk, we've more to lose. So we get more risk averse. So we don't like change, and what has worked in the past should work in the future. So the structures are not dynamic enough, they're not flexible enough in order to manage that change. And there is a big shift going from current generation to next generation. And sometimes those structures and those mentalities and those people, in a lot of cases, in the team, are not able to bear the pressure of it. And unfortunately, that's why such a high number of those businesses don't make it to the second generation. So I have a thing, I think you might have it to touch on later on, but it's the 4 S's of what can happen when you get to that stage of a current generation business. So the 4 S's are stop. So if the current generation decides either I'm retiring, I'm not doing anything, or possibly something terrible happens and they pass away and there's no succession plan in place, the business just stops. That's the first S. The second S then is sell. Plenty of private services firms that can help you to maximize that and be able to give the cash to whoever you want, go off, buy a yacht, whatever you want to do. The third is my least favorite. It's survive, where the current generation just puts somebody in place and say, look, don't rock the boat, don't make too many changes. The problem for me with survive, in theory, it seems fine. We're just going to keep doing what we've always done. But the market and the competitors and everything else is going to keep coming up and coming up and coming up and overtaking you. So survive is just a very long, painful stop. So it's my least favorite. My favorite of the four then is scale, being able to put the right people in the right seats to be able to scale the business through the generations.
Brilliant. Okay. And this is something that you have firsthand experience with, is that right?
Yeah, so I grew up in two family businesses. I ended up buying both of them and selling one. So I sold one which was 100% reliant on international travel in December 2019. So just before the pandemic. And for me, it was. I mean, I grew up in it, so I knew from an early age that this is what I wanted to do. I loved being part of it. But just before my second daughter was born, so about 13 years ago now, I nearly walked away from it all because I couldn't. We were butting heads on so many things. We had so many disagreements on the direction that we should be going in, the technology, the systems, and everything else, that I felt if I didn't leave, my parents would never be able to see their grandkids because we wouldn't be able to be in the same room as each other because we just hate each other. We just had so much tension. And the day that I said that out loud when I got home, everything in my body viscerally reacted, and I figured I needed to figure out a way of not having this be the case. So we worked on a lot of things. I did a lot of research. I met a lot of people, worked with some mentors, and now not only are we all still working together. I mean, my parents are retired, but they're still semi-involved in the business. We actually all live together in the same house now. So my wife and I sold our house, renovated my old family home, and we're all living together.
Wow. Okay. So quite a journey from that really potentially negative, and it's really interesting what you say there, that it sounded like a kind of fork in the road a little bit, where you kind of said, okay, this could be the path that we go down, but I don't want to go down that path. So figuring out how to manage that. Brilliant.
I mean, I had this whole thing, what I call the nuclear option. Like, what can I still do? What are my options? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I've only ever known kind of working for myself or working in a family business. So, what are the things that I can build? What are the things that I can do that are completely away from anything that we've done before? And I was ready to kind of pull the trigger and go, right, I'm done here. I'm going to go off and stake my own claim.
Okay.
Thankfully, I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what are the
It definitely would have been very difficult to set up a company called Successful Succession if I'd walked away from the family business. So,
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Very different messaging, I'm sure, than what you currently do.
Well, actually, I do have a thought exercise for people to think about, which is that no family member, and it's a challenge, that no family member should actually ever join a family business. And this is something to bear in mind. My contention is that the family business should always join the family member. So we have different personality traits. I mean, you're a psychologist, so different people have different strengths, different interests, different abilities. So knowing at a youngish age where the next generation is going to be at their strength and where they're going to be best suited to serve the company, if they're interested in joining the company, it all comes down to interest. Then what can we do over the next 10 years, 15 years, whatever, to try and change the trajectory, even a couple of degrees, to make sure that we're hitting their journey and their path, so we're able to do, the company is able to grow best with them at the helm.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, I suppose you mentioned there just that interest being the primary thing. I imagine that's a big, it's quite hard to, I suppose, get around that maybe if the interest isn't there. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I find, and I say this all the time, and I think we've current generation in there in the room. So people who say, "Oh, my kids have no interest in taking over my business. They have no interest in joining my business." When we dig into that a little bit, more often than not, I find that the current generation don't have a cohort or a forum or a place for them to be able to vent about their day-to-day business stuff. So the only place they can complain about is that supplier or that employee or that person or that customer or whatever, the only place they can do that is at home. And when they're doing that at the kitchen table, at dinner time, all the kids are hearing is pure negativity. They're looking at the parents going, why on earth would I join that hellhole? Because it's nothing but a stream of negativity. Now, we're all entrepreneurs. There's things that we don't enjoy doing. There's things that we have to do for the sake of the business or for the sake of everything else. But ultimately, we're doing it because we want to do this. We want to accomplish this thing. There is this drive in us to build these businesses. So what I would encourage current generations to do, and people who are thinking, and we had other people in the room that are entrepreneurs that aren't sure if they're going to be family business or not, share everything. Share the good, share the bad, share the reason why you're doing this. What's your why? Why do you get out of bed in the morning to go do this all the time? Because one of the things that I find, people who have said, oh, my kids had no interest in the business, again, because you were being purely negative and 100% negative about what it was like to work in the business. Then when that teenager hits about 15, 16, they didn't get a summer job, they're kind of lounging around, and the entrepreneur parent is like, there's no way you're just lounging around here eating my food. Put on a shirt, you're coming with me to the office. That's when they discover, actually, there's fun parts of this business is really cool. Oh, that's really cool. I really enjoy that. Or the marketing side of this, or the distribution, or the whatever. And that's when they start to find, actually, there's bits of this business that really appeal to me and my personality and my interests. But if they've just heard the negativity, it's not going to happen.
Okay. So getting the firsthand experience, and also, the current generation kind of sharing the positives as well. Okay. Brilliant. Yeah. And so I suppose, other than interest, are there any other big challenges that people or businesses often face?
So I kind of touched on this with the current generation bit. Part of it is personality. So we use Hogan assessments, and we have, even just broadly speaking, the 6 different leadership styles. You're potentially a results leader, a process leader, a data leader, a social leader, a thought leader, or a people leader. I think I got them all. I might have said thought twice. Maybe it's social, but different people have different leadership styles. So if we take it, let's say we have the current generation who is very driven. When they were building up the business, it was blood, sweat, and tears. They put in everything. They're all about results. They're all about driving forward. But the next generation haven't grown up. They've grown up working hard in the business, but they haven't had the same level of sacrifices necessarily as the first generation have. So they might be more, more of a thought leader, or more of a people leader, or more moving things together. And there can be real unconscious bias between how those two things are done, because the current generation, with their unconscious bias, they think the way that I've built it is the way that the business should be run. Whereas the next generation is growing up in the world that business is going to exist in, and they have a different view of how that's going to be done. I don't know if people are familiar with the hero's journey. This is this everyday story. So there's a book of A Hero with 1,000 Faces. Basically, every hero's journey in literature and movies, it all follows a similar arc. People start in the status quo. They find a mentor. They go to the special place of the special world, and they come out a better person the other side. Harry Potter had Dumbledore, Luke Skywalker had Yoda. Like, all of these people have these mentors. So my argument is that the current generation, who are currently the heroes in their own hero's journey, need to come back to the real world, back to the status quo, and become the mentor for the next hero's journey. And that's how we can have this successful succession planning go ahead, because those people are able to share their knowledge and share their information, but actually let the next generation go and be the hero of their journey. Because the thing that's really important is what got us here is not going to get them there. If you think about how different the world is in the last 20 years, how we've changed, how the world is going to change, the best people to tackle that are the people who are growing up in that world right now. So doing things the way that they've always done. That's why survive is such a bad S in the things that can happen in a business. Things are going to change so quickly over the next 20 years. What has worked before won't necessarily work in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a big message for any business, regardless of whether you're doing this, succession planning or not. It's recognizing that, what got you here won't get you there. The solutions from yesterday are not necessarily the solutions for tomorrow. So yeah, that's a really good point though, about the best people to solve the problems of today are the people growing up in that world. So yeah, that's really interesting.
It's a conversation that my wife and I had a lot. So my teenage daughters, they text everybody. They Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever. They don't call anybody. And it used to frustrate us. Like, what time are you meeting your friends at? Oh, I don't know. They haven't got back to me. It's like, phone them. We bought you a phone. Phone them. It's like, oh no, I don't want to phone them. I don't want to phone them. Yeah. And my wife was getting really frustrated with this because when I was younger, I would just phone everybody, and that's what we'd do. And I said, yeah, but think about it. When we were that age, our parents were trying to get us to write letters to our aunts and uncles to thank them for birthday cards and all this kind of stuff, because that's the medium that they used. We had the medium of the phone. Our kids have the medium of text message and short videos and having this personalized messaging thing. So that's the world that is going to exist in 20 years' time. And when we start ringing people, it already happens. When people start ringing people now, it's like, oh, was you sending me a letter in the post? What So it's already becoming outdated. So the future is going to be that, not what we have.
Yeah. And like you said there about thinking how different the world was 20 years ago, you know, even 5 years ago, really, like, you know, we've gone through such a massive change. So I think, yeah, absolutely, we have to keep adapting.
So I'm not going to assume your age or anybody else's age on the call, but I am old enough to remember the Crazy Frog, which was a ringtone that you could buy for like 99p. You had to send off and you got this MIDI file for these early age phones.
Yeah.
This was a massive business across Europe and North America where people would download MIDI files. They would download specific ringtones and you could assign different ringtones for each of your friends. If my daughter's phone rings because somebody's trying to get to her, she has a physical reaction to it that is like, well, so not only is that entire industry dead, the need for that industry doesn't exist anymore. So things have changed, and that's only 15, 20 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's so funny. We were watching like an old TV show recently, and it was like a recording and it still had the ads. So we were seeing ads from like 2005 and we were just like, oh my God, like, yeah, it was Crazy Frog ringtones and the wallpapers that you'd again pay €1 for.
All that craziness.
Yeah.
So I mean the world has changed dramatically. 20 years ago when we were maybe leaving college and going into the workforce, I mean, Facebook didn't exist. YouTube was a kind of a thing. So Twitter didn't exist. All of it. Well, Twitter might not exist by this time next year, but I mean, that's a different conversation. But so the world is changing. Yeah. So what got us here is not necessarily going to get them there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's a really good, I suppose, message for you know, businesses to take. Is there anything else that you think they should really know or, you know, put on their radar if succession planning is in their mind?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of trying to spend as much time coaching the next generation as you can. So my window really is 5 years maximum. If you've decided that you're moving on from the business and you want to retire and you want to step back, 5 years is the maximum time that you should be looking at your window. If you think the next generation is really ready to do it. I'm not saying, okay, they're 15 now, so by the time they're 20, that's it. They're taking over the business. That I'm not suggesting that, but if they've been involved in the business for a while, they're showing an interest and they've said, look, I really want to do this. 5 years, I think, is the maximum window of where you should be looking, but then they should have a 20, 30, 40 year vision on the business. So I have this platform, this process called the 5 Ps of succession planning. So it was going to be the 5 S's, but I'm Stephen Shortt from Successful Succession with the 5. It just would have been ridiculous. But this works whether you're in a family business or whether you're in a normal business and you're a leader in a regular business where you don't own the business. But if you want to progress in your career, you have to find somebody to take your place to be able to move up the ladder. Because we all know if you're irreplaceable, you're unpromotable as well. So you have to make sure that you have somebody that you're able to be solid in, that you're going to be then managing so you can go up the ladder. And it's the exact same process. So the 5 Ps, the first one is purpose. Why are we here? What's the reason for this role to exist? What's the reason for this company to exist? Once we have a clear purpose, then a lot of other things start to align and start to come together. When you're talking about succession planning, if you're the current generation, you should have a 5-year vision on what that purpose is. But the next generation should have a 30-year vision on what that vision is. And then we need to align those first 5 years to make sure that happens seamlessly. So we hand the baton off the next generation. The second one is pick. Now, in family businesses, traditionally, I mean, if the day you were born, your father decided to rename the garage to O'Neill's and Sons, guess what? You're already picked. The purpose of the business doesn't matter. You're picked. Thankfully now it happens less and less, where it's just the first male heir is the person who takes over. There's a lot more dynamic thinking. There's a lot more progression happening in businesses, which is fantastic. I have friends in Spain, for example. The eldest son, not interested in taking over the business, but is very interested in being middle manager, enjoying his part of the business. The middle daughter, again, doesn't want to take over the business. She's in accounts, she's in HR and finance. She's really process driven. That's what she wants to do. It's the youngest son who's taking over and being groomed to be the CEO for this international business in Spain, which is fantastic. Then we get to the pick. So the second P is pick. Who is it that's best to see us through this part now? So if you're in a regular business, if you're to finding somebody to replace you as you go up your career, who are you going to pick to be able to take over from you? If you're looking at succession planning for the family business, who's the best person? So I had a friend and a client, we were talking about this before. He is the typical CEO, kind of out there, gregarious, going to networking, going to driving sales, out at sales events, and the face of the company, really enjoying it. His son is interested in joining the business, but his son is a process leader, very much likes to make sure that things are efficiently run, make sure that things are done well. Not the same at all, not the same type of personality at all. So we came up with a plan that in the next 5 years, they're going to work together, and he's going to be more process, like the COO type. Then when my client is looking at retiring, they're going to take in a CEO for hire. They're going to hire somebody, give them a big salary and say, right, your job now over the next 10 years is to take us from 3.5, 4 million, whatever, to 10 million. In those 10 years, you're going to increase the business. My son is going to work hand in hand with you, side by side, CEO, COO, learn everything there is to know about the growing business. Once we get to about 10, maybe 12 million, that's when we think, right, this is now sustainable for 20 years. And it's all about managing and efficiency. The CEO will then get a massive golden parachute, get paid a load of money for, thank you very much for doing this. Off you go now to be a CEO for a huge organization where you've been able to show your skills, etc. The thinking and the rationale behind this, if we look at Apple, so Steve Jobs and Tim Cook worked hand in hand. Tim Cook basically ran everything to do with Apple except for product innovation and marketing. That was Steve's. When Steve passed away, Tim Cook became the CEO. There's been no real innovation. There's been no real dynamic shifts, but Apple has never been more profitable, has never been more successful, and because they weren't wasting money on all of these crazy ideas. So the idea is to get us to that point. So who's the right person now? Who's the right pick now? Might not be the same person as the right pick in 20 years' time. That all depends on the purpose of the business.
Okay.
So that's the purpose and the pick. The next then is the prepare. Prepare has two bits. It's internal development and external development. So if they're going off and getting training, an MBA, a master's, going and working in another organization for 5 years up to that point to come across or whatever it is, or if they're coming in to your own business, they start as low as possible and work their way up so as they learn the business. And this is, happens all the time. Famously happened with Arthur Guinness and Arthur Guinness's family. Arthur Guinness II came in low, had lots of training, but still came in low and was able to help reshape the business. So that's where the 5 years bit is. 5 years of preparing maximum, and that's coaching, that's mentoring, that's making sure that the next generation understands the reason we made all these decisions, the knowledge, so they have this knowledge as they go forward to make their own decisions. The fourth then is promote. And promote again has two meanings. It's actually giving the person the job and saying, yes, you are now in charge, junior, this is now your baby, run with it, I trust you. But the second bit of promote is you have to be the biggest cheerleader for the next generation. You have to be telling people, no, that's junior's decision, that's his or her decision, nothing to do with me. I fully support them. I 100% believe in what they're doing. Now, you might have you might have differences. You might disagree with some of the decisions they're making, but all of those disagreements and coaching sessions have to happen behind closed doors, because if you undermine the next generation in public, forget it, you're done. And then the fifth P is patience, because at some point the proverbial is going to hit the fan, and we're all humans. So we need to have a bit of patience and understand and work together.
Brilliant. I love that. So purpose, pick, prepare, promote, and patience.
Correct.
Excellent. Love it. I'm just jotting those down because it was really interesting there. That yeah, I think that makes sense as well. Starting with purpose, if you're not,
Mhm.
if you don't have that clear kind of vision. Is there any particular one that people tend to struggle most with, or does it kind of, it's just case by case?
Um, it's case by case, and it usually, if there's a problem with promote, for example, if there's a problem with the current generation kind of letting go, it's because they haven't done the promote bit, what they haven't actually handed over, because they haven't mentally actually given it over. If they haven't given it over, it's because the step before they feel they haven't prepared, or they feel they're not doing it right. They're not doing it exactly the same way as they have. If they're feeling that the prepare isn't working, it's probably because they feel that they haven't picked the right person. And if it all comes back to why haven't they picked the right person, because they have a different view on where we should be going, so we're not aligned on the prepare on the purpose. So it all, like, if there's a problem, it's because of the step behind it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I suppose I'll just pause for 1 second and just check if anybody has any questions or comments at this stage. If you want to just pop anything in the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourselves either. Just as a reminder that the chat is there, so feel free to tap into the wisdom that Stephen is sharing so generously.
And a lot of the time, when I do these workshops or I do these sessions, you can be asking on behalf of a friend. So my friend's son is a lazy so-and-so and won't get involved in the business, or something like that. So quite happy to have a talk about those hypotheticals as well.
Exactly. Or if in the chat, I think there's the option to send direct messages. So instead of to everyone, you could send it just to Stephen or just to myself, and we can read it out that way. But yeah, those options are there. And Stephen, what about, maybe if someone is maybe in a larger organization, if they're a leader and they're thinking of retiring, I imagine there's some differences there compared to, say, family business.
So I suppose the main difference, if you're retiring, you don't get the same say in the pick, I suppose, because somebody else has the vision for the purpose of what your division is going to be doing or what your department is going to be doing. If you're staying on and if you're building up your team, then you have an idea of what's the purpose. Like, what are we here? Are we the marketing division? Are we the product division? Are we the distribution division? Like, what is the purpose? What's the reason that our team exists? If I'm going to be stepping up from a marketing executive to a marketing manager, I need a marketing executive that understands that the purpose of that role right now is to help to develop these ideas, to actually do the administration of running the Google ads or whatever it is for that position. So in order for you to step up, you need to make sure that person, okay, you don't need to have the same long-term vista on the purpose, but you still need to understand what the purpose is. Then you need to pick the right person. Is it somebody who's going to be more creative, or do you actually want somebody, if you're taking the creative side of it, do you actually say, maybe I need a process-driven person. Maybe I need somebody who's more into the data analytics, for example, to help me to counterbalance. Then it's the prepare, like, have they done the outside training? Have they got the certificates? Have they done the Google Webmaster course? Perfect. That's great. Then promote them, they have the job, and then you're working together with them. So the framework still stands. There are some nuances though, if it's not for family businesses.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe might not have as much control, but still need to be quite clear. And I suppose I imagine the vision might come, from that kind of
it's more external
a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what about someone, maybe if they were more maybe they're kind of at an earlier or mid stage in their career, they're not quite at the retirement age, but I suppose, is there anything for them to even be considering?
So the other thing that I've worked with people in career guidance, we do career guidance as well. So I've worked with people who are looking to be promoted and looking to have to be the person who's picked. So using that framework then with some of your superiors, people who are higher up on the pecking order, to actually sit down with them, go, hey, look, I really buy into the vision of the business. I think I'd be the right person to become the new logistics director or the new procurement manager or something like that, because of my skills, because of what I have, because of my interest, because of my personality. And I have an interest in this and I see a vision for this. I see, and almost make them see how the purpose of that role fits you and the company alignment. So you're seeing where you're getting on together. So using that framework where you're in the loop as opposed to deciding on the loop can be very useful. And even highlighting it to your manager and saying, look, this is what I'd like to do. This is why I think this is important. I think I'm the right pick. I've done the prepare, I've done the training, I've done the other stuff. I'd love to work with you or work with somebody else to get me ready for this position and then be promoted up to that role. So it's a framework, and people, especially in structured organizations, they love a good framework.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing, sorry, I remember there was one or two people on the call who are current generation entrepreneurs, but they're not sure if they're family businesses. So one of the things that I get people to do is, we've all heard of side hustles, and to have my side hustle that pays for my holiday, or my side hustle that does this, or my Etsy, or my whatever. What I would encourage companies like this, who are not sure if they want to get into the next generation, or if the next generation are going to join them, is to create what I call an inside hustle. So what's a product, a service, something that can be a bolt-on, an add-on, which uses the resources of the company, but if it doesn't work, can be jettisoned. It can be thrown off, and okay, we didn't use too many resources, but we learned something and we were able to use this as a way for the next generation to get involved in the business. So the way we did this, we had an English language school. Many years ago, when I was starting to come up in the management of the business and wanting to learn about management of the business, we started running summer camps. And the summer camps were easy enough to do, because really, if I messed it up too bad, it was only going to be 2 or 3 weeks. I'll have another go next year. By the time we sold the business, the summer camps accounted for almost 25% of our revenue in just that month and a half that we ran those couple of summer camps. So it became a really big, important part of the business. There's other things that we did with online learning that didn't really pan out. We tried it. We used some of the resources of the school. But actually, when everything went remote and went online through COVID, the team was able to switch on to digital straight away, because we had a lot of that prep work already done. So it didn't become a big part of the business, but we took the learnings from it. I have a friend in South Africa who I was talking to him about this topic exactly. And his son isn't really he's in presentations. He teaches people how to do presentations. He does slide decks and design and a kind of a sideline in organizing the events, because he's gregarious, bigger than life, and connects very well with people. His son, not really interested. He's a very good public speaker because he's grown up in that world, but he's not really interested in that. He's more interested in the logistics and the preparation and stuff. So now what they're doing is they're having an inside hustle of actually not just organizing the events and taking in another company to actually do the stage design and set design and stage management. They're doing it themselves. And the son is getting involved in that because he's really interested in the engineering element of putting all these together, and the lighting rigs and the sound rigs and the dressing the room and all the rest of it. So that's what I talk about as well. Like, no family member should join the family business. The family business should join the family member. So over the next couple of years, they're building out this inside hustle to see if it's something that makes more sense for the next generation to take over. And by the time, in 20 years' time, the business will look a lot less like it does now and more like that. So this is for people who are thinking of maybe having the family people join their business. Have a look at your inside hustle ideas.
I love that. Yeah, really interesting. So just even having that opportunity to kind of experiment and it sounds like being very explicit about it's fine if it fails. Yep. It's kind of the best kind of failure where, yeah, you learn something, you experiment, maybe it goes well, or maybe you've learned that it didn't work, and then you have more info.
It's just escaping me the name of the company, but there's a company again in South Africa, as my friend told me this. This guy had built up a sunglasses business for years, really strong name, really kind of because it had grown up, it was the hip and cool brand in the 80s and 90s, but now it's gotten a little bit older, a little bit staid. And they do really good business because they're churning out, but their target demographic is 40, 50, 60 years of age. His nephew joined the business because he wanted to do something and to build something fun, but he wanted to learn about it. So they spun out a new brand with everything they knew about glasses, about lenses, about shapes, about marketing, about product placement and everything else. And that brand became so big that they actually sold the original brand And the
Wow.
new brand that they built as their inside hustle became a much bigger brand with a younger demographic.
Wow.
I need to find the name of that brand again. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Sure, yeah, we can look it up afterwards. But yeah, very interesting. Okay. And I think something you've kind of touched on is around the element of personality, and it does sound like that just plays a huge role. And do you use kind of psychometric assessments with people often to give them that insight into their own personality?
Yes. So, I mean, part of our main part of our business, we do career guidance, we do selection for companies. So we use personality profiles all the time. We've developed our own career guidance program, but we also use Hogan assessments. I think you're familiar with them, Julie.
Yeah.
We have used, I've used Strengths Finders. Enneagram is more for the personal side of things, is less for the business side of the business. It's more for the personal side of the business, the family business. DISC and Myers-Briggs, I mean, they're good introductions, but they're a little bit too basic for really what you need to dig into if you need to go into a little bit more depth, I think. But as I mentioned, Hogan has the very, very in-depth 27 scales from 0 to 100, and everybody's on a score. But they use this leadership style. So it's a very easy way for people to be able to understand their unique leadership style, what that means in terms of their unconscious biases, what that means in terms of how they're likely to reward people, how they're likely to engage, and what kind of an environment they're likely to create. And it makes it very easy to then have those conversations. But, well, we're not talking about you do this. We're talking about this type of leader does this. So it removes some of the baggage and some of the sting. We're not attacking you. We're saying this is how these leaders behave, and you're one of these leaders. So if we see how those biases are, can we see where the tension is? And it allows the conversation to flow a lot easier, because you're not saying you are like this and you are wrong. So, which I find to be invaluable when you're dealing, especially with the amount of baggage that goes on in a family business.
Yeah.
The phrase I use is blood is thicker than water, but it boils a lot faster.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, definitely. It sounds like it is obviously very personal a lot of the time. So yeah, it could probably, I imagine, be very easy to get the defenses up, people feeling threatened. So yeah, that sounds like a good tool to just break down those barriers a little bit and enhance that bit of self-awareness. I just see a chat there. Ben put a message in just asking strategic planning, thoughts on developing this skill?
So strategic thinking, and so in terms of the Hogan stuff, I'm a thought leader, a people leader, and a social leader. So my default is always to be thinking strategically, thinking long term, thinking in the future. Personally, I think it's hugely important. Depending on the business, so thinking strategically about what we want to do next is really important. If it's not something that you naturally spend your time on, if you're in, like most business owners, that you spend far more time in the business than on the business, it can be difficult to think strategically. So doing a strategy workshop, getting somebody in, whether you're using the E-Myth Revisited, whether you're looking at EOS, which we actually use in the business here, whether you're getting somebody even like me in to do a one-day session on strategic planning for long-term stuff, getting something like that, getting an external person in can be very helpful. I think you guys do that as well, don't you? In Jigsaw, you help with the strategic planning and getting all of that stuff. So being able to take the resources that you have and step out of the business, even one day a year, to work with people like yourselves, to really think about where we're going and how we're getting there. But bearing in mind that in your 1 year vision, that's fine. But really, if we're talking about long-term stuff, we should have at least some kind of a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. Where are we going to be able to understand that? But thinking strategically, I think it's vitally important for the leader of any business to think strategically about their business. But it's a lot easier said than done. You need to be working on the business instead of in the business. So you need to carve out some time to do that.
Yeah. And yeah, what you said there about people working in the business rather than on the business is something we just see so often. Yeah, it is definitely a a tricky one, because it really gets in the way of being strategic. But I do think that what you mentioned there, like even like your local enterprise office, like there tends to be so many resources, even, like you mentioned, there is a lot of that kind of external support and mentoring that people can avail of, which is great. I can see that Isabel put it into the chat. Are there any resources or templates that you can provide or signpost us towards for strategic planning? So any kind of templates or resources you'd recommend, Stephen?
So I don't, is this something that you guys do? This is a service and a support that you guys offer in Jigsaw for companies, is it?
Yeah, so we would do a lot of work around the kind of like operational excellence, the kind of lean. So it does definitely involve the, say for example, helping people with their mission, vision, values. So we do help them with that kind of establishing their business model, things like that. Yeah, so those kind of business model canvases, those can be really useful.
So I have 2 of those business model generation books. I was actually at a call on a call with him, DeValler, or whatever his name is, about a year ago. What I would recommend, so I've gone through things like scaling up. I've gone through things like EOS. I've gone through making big happen, the CEO stuff. The one that I think is the most applicable to small, medium style businesses and can be adapted for larger businesses is Traction, as EOS. I really like it. We use it in our business. When you're a little bit bigger, probably scaling up is more complicated and more complex, because you need more complexity to run a bigger business. But even the ideas within Traction and scaling up, and it talks a lot about, Julie, you talked about a lot of these things, and it's having the vision, having the 3-year vision, having the 10-year vision, and then what are you working on this quarter to be able to focus in on getting to those goals. I find them to be very, very beneficial.
Okay, brilliant. And we can always, share resources afterwards. Actually, Andrea, you might pop into the chat the link for where we usually do put our resources, and those will also be going out in an email afterwards as well. So we'll have access to the recording as we usually do, and the resources that we can pop in afterwards, based on what you mentioned there. So I suppose I'm just conscious we're coming kind of towards the hour. I was going to pop up this little slide that I've heard this quote before, and I think it kind of nicely sort of sums it up. And Stephen, if people, if this has kind of piqued people's interest and they want to learn more, or want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
So the website is successfulsuccession.com. I know some people can stumble over it a little bit, but it is Successful Succession. That's what we do. All of my contact details are there. If anyone has anything that they want to get more information on, I'm really more than happy to have a chat with people. I actually really like this quote, that you're not a leader until you produce other leaders. The phrase that I would have used in my business is always, the best leaders make more leaders. Because if you're hoarding that information or hoarding that stuff, you're not really leading, you're micromanaging it a little bit. But I just I went for a walk with my dog yesterday with a friend of mine who's visiting from Spain. She's from one of the leading, she's from IE, one of the leading private business schools in Spain. And we were talking about entrepreneurship and the difference between entrepreneurship and gig economy and things like that. And for me, when you have a business and you're an entrepreneur, when you employ other people, when you're bringing other people on the journey with you. So I think I'm a big believer in, you can't do this stuff alone. It's a nightmare to do it alone. There's all kinds of resources like yourselves in Jigsaw, books, tests, all this other stuff that's out there to help you. That building up other people around you is vitally important, and bringing them with you on the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really, really enjoyed listening to all those insights. I think the main one that I think that really stuck with me was that idea of like, if you're irreplaceable, what is it? If you're irreplaceable, you're unpromotable. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I really like that. It's again, that message that we need to be, again, bringing people along, sharing that information. And again, that goes for if you wanted to sell your business, if you can't take a step away from it, then yeah, how could you sell it?
So if you're, and this is something that I've worked with a lot of people who are thinking in this terms, if your business revolves around you and you don't have the processes and structures in place for the business to exist without you, first of all, you don't have a business, you have a job. But second of all, you can never sell that business because the business is you. So you have to have that stuff in place that it can operate and function without you. You absolutely have a hand in it. You have direction. You have an input into it. But if it can't function without you, you're trapped.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard Owen McGee say the same thing. He's that financial advisor. And I was at a talk that he was speaking at, and he said actually that he had kind of he has his own business, and that he had then this medical emergency. He was in hospital, kind of lucky to be alive type of thing. And, the doctor was saying, okay, you need a minimum of 3 weeks off work. And he was like, no, I'm self-employed. Like, when can I actually go back to work? And they were like, you are lucky to be alive,
Yeah.
So he was kind of like, okay, my business is going to collapse, and then he was kind of sharing it as like a learning of, can you take it 3 weeks away from your business? And a lot of people in the room, a lot of, self-employed people or, entrepreneurs were kind of going, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So he was saying it from the kind of financial planning point of view. But yeah, exactly like you said, it's a job and you're kind of trapped in it if you couldn't possibly take a step away from it. And I suppose recognizing that it doesn't have to be that way as well.
So I had one of my mentors years ago, still very close to him, very, very friendly with him. I found him to be utterly inspiring. He ran his entire business from an iPad, which meant that he couldn't jump in and help somebody with a video edit or help somebody with a proposal or help somebody with this. Like, he had to have the structures in place to trust people that they could do the bits that they needed to do. And he was able to add his genius when he needed to. I'm very far away from that, but it is one of my goals to be able to run the business from an iPad.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I love that. No, that's a great goal. So as I say, if anyone does have any further questions or comments, please do pop them into the chat. I do want to just let people know about what's coming up over next month. So when we're talking about, all these aspects of getting our processes in place, that is, as Stephen mentioned, very much something that we do here. So our March sessions were quite people focused, the people side of the business. So our April sessions will be a bit more focused on the process side of the business. So on the 12th of April, Stuart will be hosting on the foundations of operational excellence. So that is basically, if you've ever been in work and thought there has to be a better way, then this one is for you. So we'll cover the 5S, the visual management and standards. So it'll be really valuable for anyone who wants to attend to get a bit of food for thought in terms of how to work smarter, not harder. So the link for that is in the chat there as well. And then on the 26th of April, we will have a guest, Rebecca Mahan from Tirlon. They're formerly Glanbia, so it's a massive Irish company. Rebecca is a business excellent specialist, and she'll be sharing what Tirlon have been doing in relation to business excellence. So that is heavily influenced by the Shingo model. So again, this is a great opportunity just to hear what other companies are doing well, what kind of challenges they may have overcome in terms of their lean or operational excellence journey. So Andrea, I'll just pop that into the chat as well. As always, keep in touch. We are on LinkedIn, we're on Eventbrite. That's where you'll find all the upcoming events. We will be sending you an email afterwards as well, so that you have access to the recording from this session. If you want to share it with anyone, please feel free. And then we'll also have the resources up there as well. So that is all from me for now. I'll hang on for another few minutes in case anyone does have any questions or comments. But in the meantime, sorry, did someone want to come in with a question there?
Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't realize I'm actually driving, so I couldn't get the microphone to work.
No worries.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All it was a question for Stephen. I'm a second generation business. We've been going for over 36 years now, family business. But
Congratulations.
Thanks a million. But I took it over in 2006. But even now, I have very young kids. They're 9 and 7, and the chances of them ever being involved are probably slim. So I'm actually thinking at the moment of I have a great team that have been with me, some of them since 2008, of making them shareholder directors, with eventually looking to
management buyout.
Yes, as an exit strategy. And I was just wondering your kind of thoughts on that.
I have friends who have had family businesses that they've done exactly this, whether it wasn't the right time. The kids just weren't interested. They had different interests. They had different directions that they grew up in. They wanted to go off and be lawyers, or they wanted to go off and be something else that wasn't in any way related to the business. And that absolutely happens. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because as parents as well, even though the family business is probably, you said you have 2 kids, which means you probably have 3 kids, which is the family business and the 2 kids. So you want the best for all 3 of them, and without necessarily forcing somebody in young into the business. If you do the management buyout, you still have, you're going to be hopefully working in the business, having a connection with the business, maybe being consulting a little bit afterwards, leaving on good terms. So you still have a whole breadth of knowledge and connections that even 10 years later, if one of the kids comes up and goes, actually, I'd love to actually work in that industry. I know a lot about it and I have a real interest in it. You're still able to give them a heads up and a leg up to be able to get into that industry and to get ahead than if they were just going in cold from somewhere else. So I wouldn't be beating yourself up over they're young. If the timing's not right, the timing is right for the business, then that's the way it is.
And I presume the key to really is nailing down the shareholders agreements and so forth with the solicitors and the accountants and having everything so airtight. Like,
get your tax advisor, get your legal advisor. My tax advisor, my legal advisor, and my insurance advisor are all people that I pay very promptly, and I pay them to make sure that if they're happy, I'm happy. So they can get all of that nailed down for you. And please don't feel that you don't want to ask stupid questions. You're better asking stupid questions than feeling stupid in 5 years' time. They can get all that done for you in the sales side. I don't know, is that something, Julie, that you guys do in Jigsaw that you can advise and help with? I didn't think so.
Wouldn't be the tax. Yeah, it wouldn't be as much our side, but we again would know people depending on the area that we're in. So yeah, could always send people your way.
And there could always be, you can write anything into a management buyout to say, you might want to hold on to X% of it, that in 10 years time, if your 2 kids decide that they don't want to be involved in, then that last 10% can be bought outright by the management people. It's like everything is up for discussion. There's nothing cut and dry. Yeah. There's no rules.
Yeah, and it's an open playing field, which is great.
Yeah.
No, super. Look, I appreciate the feedback. Thanks,
no problem. Best of luck with
it. Thanks, Julie, thanks a million for a great chat.
No worries. Thanks for joining. All right. So thank you everyone again, and I'll hopefully see you at the next one.